Hello and welcome to Landlord Voice, the podcast of the Scottish Association of Landlords, bringing to you all the news and views of what's happening in Scotland's private rented sector. My name is John Blackwood and I'm the Chief Executive of the Scottish Association of Landlords, and as always in the podcast I'm joined by Alan Grant, our PR consultant and expert, and it's wonderful to have you back online for this episode of the podcast, Alan.
Indeed, John, thanks very much. It's great to be back with you too. Now, before we get stuck into the show today, just like to send a little thank you to everyone who has liked, shared, subscribed and commented on Landlord Voices so far. We put in a lot of work into this podcast and we very much appreciate it, and it's a great way to support the show. So if you'd like to support us, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, telling someone else you know about the show. We appreciate all of it.
Now, at this point, we normally, Alan, talk about what the politicians are up to and what's happening in the Scottish Parliament. But of course, we are in recess at the moment and there's not a lot going on, or is there?
Well, that's true, John. The Scottish Parliament is in recess just now, meaning that there's no parliamentary business taking place at the moment. Most MSPs will be out in their constituencies, they'll be catching up on casework, and I suspect this might be the case for quite a few of them, getting ready and putting in some groundwork ahead of the Holyrood elections in May. But the one place we can guarantee they won't be right now is in the Scottish Parliament building.
So with the strict business of politics at a pause until August, it's important to, of course, point out that Scotland's landlords and letting agents are still out there working hard and getting on with the job.
Indeed, John, and perhaps we could use this period for you to tell us a little bit more about what members are telling you at the moment, what you're hearing from members.
Of course, during this period of recess, it gives us as an opportunity as SAL to be able to get out there and speak to our landlord and letting agent members. And in the last month or so, we've had a couple of in-person events that we've organised. And that's been an opportunity for members to come together, to share ideas and just generally catch up on what's new in the sector. So we've organised so far an event in Glasgow and in Edinburgh with more to come. And of course, I've had an opportunity with my colleague Amanda Viviorca, a fellow director of SAL, to be able to go out there and meet some of our letting agent members in the local communities, and that's been really interesting too. So it's been great to get out and about.
And how would you say the mood is amongst the people you've been out meeting?
I think the main thing to reflect is that our members are getting on with the job. And despite everything that we've been talking about with changes in legislation and more to come, and the general mood of private renting in Scotland and how landlords are feeling, many of whom, as we've talked about before, choosing to sell up and leave. Mm-hmm. Letting agents are just getting on. They're adapting their businesses where they need to adapt, embracing new technologies as well too, and of course grappling with the everyday challenges of running a small business. So it's all been very interesting, and it's been great, as I say, to get out and about and hear direct from them as to how they are experiencing the sector and the market in their local areas.
That's brilliant. And in terms of those challenges that you mentioned earlier on, what are you hearing are the big challenges for Scotland's private rented sector?
I think certainly for our letting agent members, talking to them, running a business, as I say, has been a challenge, of course, with all the changes faced by small employers in recent times. And of course, dealing with staffing issues, recruiting new staff, retaining staff. These are always things that, of course, every business is faced with on a day-to-day basis. Adapting to new technologies has been really interesting, and it's fascinating, certainly for myself and Amanda, to hear from agents as to what technologies they're embracing in their everyday business, what new software they're using or partnerships they're creating with other organisations. But the big thing that they were all talking about was the challenges of taking cases through the first tier tribunal. And that's something I think we'll return to on this podcast another time. They're all saying really the frustration is how long that process takes. And of course the knock-on effect that has for landlords and for tenants too.
And with that teaser for a future episode of Landlord Voice firmly established. I'd like to move on to, because I believe we have a guest joining us via the magic of digital technology. So, John, I'll hand over to you to introduce our guest interview for today.
Yeah, and certainly as part of our podcasts, we think it's important to bring in guest speakers on particular subjects. And I was talking there about the challenges posed to running small businesses in Scotland and landlords and letting agents in general. But one challenge that every landlord and letting agent is faced with from time to time is managing the end of tenancy process. And of course, that all important return of the tenant's deposits or making a claim on that deposit. So we're going to focus on that subject a little bit today, and I'm delighted we're going to be bringing in online a guest who is Carol Bradburn, and she's going to be talking to us about the work of Safe Deposit Scotland, and Carol is acting head of Safe Deposit Scotland. So welcome, Carol, to the podcast.
Hi.
Hello, Carol.
How are you?
It's lovely to have you. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us virtually here and be part of our third podcast that's going out in the beginning of August, effectively. Carol, you're with Safe Deposit Scotland. I was talking about ending the tenancy process. Tell us a bit about Safe Deposit Scotland. What do you actually do?
So Safe Deposits has been an industry-led safe deposit scheme that's been supporting the industry for a long time. We are here to support landlords, letting agents and tenants to navigate their way through the protection of their deposit, as well as ending a tenancy and releasing deposits. And if there's any disputes, to help people through that process as well.
Now, there's other schemes out there managing tenancy deposits, not just Safe Deposit Scotland. But why should people come to Safe Deposit Scotland as opposed to perhaps one of the other schemes?
Well, I think the fundamental difference between ourselves and the other schemes is that we are based in Scotland. We're based in Glasgow, but we have a team of greatly experienced staff who are able to outreach letting agents, support landlords at local authority events, support SAL, Property Mark as well, to trying to get the good practice out there for everybody to support them through the processes of protecting the deposits.
So what are the main issues that you can see that landlords and letting agents too are coming to you saying, this is what we're struggling with when managing the end of tenancy process? What's your experience? What they're telling you?
I think the big problems that they mostly experience is how to discuss at the end of a tenancy any issues that arise, and speaking to a tenant with regards to making deductions against a deposit. I think a lot of people find it really difficult, especially landlords who've never been in that situation before, that find them difficult to have that conversation with tenants. It may be a difficult conversation to say, we're unhappy with the cleanliness of the property, and we're looking to make deductions. The team in the office we've got a self-resolution process that we can help you navigate through that difficult conversation. And if you're maybe struggling to reach that maybe amicable agreement, we can help assist on that.
I think you maybe hit it in the head there. It's a difficult conversation, I think, for anybody to have. And most landlords, as we know, just own 2 or 3 properties, or maybe even just one property. So they're not big portfolio holders. And of course, they might have a tenant who's been there for some years. So you built up a good relationship, hopefully, with that tenant over a period of time. And you come to the end of tenancy, and you might see things when you're going through that process of checking out that tenant at the end of tenancy process and thinking, I'm going to have to make a claim against this deposit. But how do I approach that subject? Because effectively, tenant's not going to like what you're going to say and what they're going to hear. And how do you manage that to still hopefully have a positive relationship at the end of it?
Yeah, I think there's probably some fundamental processes you should put in place prior to the tenant moving into the property. What I always suggest is having a good inventory at the start of the tenancy. In paper, some details of condition and the cleanliness at the start, supported by some photographs, and that presented to the tenant at the start of tenancy then sets the standards of the condition you're looking for at the end of the tenancy. I think when that's been presented, the tenant can then understand in comparison at the end if there's any cleaning issues or if there's any damage that they can be addressed. I think that's probably one of the big issues that's probably missing when it comes to an end of a tenancy, if there's any disputes, if we don't have that kind of evidence in place. Secondly is probably communication through the tenancy. I think it's good for the landlords to be in touch with the tenants regularly throughout the tenancy. It means they can keep a good relationship throughout the tenancy. And then at the end, if there's any issues, it's an easier conversation to be had because you've built up that repertoire with both parties. And I think it's a easier conversation because you've discussed the problems that you might anticipate coming to the end and resolving it before it gets to that stage.
So if we're coming to the end of that tenancy and that final date of the tenancy, is it worthwhile maybe landlords going to see the tenant prior to that date to have a chat with them about what to expect at that end of tenancy check? Would that be useful?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think since when the tenant gives notice, it might be worthwhile just reaching out to them beforehand and just ideally what you want to be doing is returning the full deposit back to the tenant. So if you've preempted any problems, maybe saying to them if it was an unfurnished property to make sure that any furniture is removed from the property prior to the end of the tenancy, certain areas that need cleaned, troubled areas like ovens, fridges, wash machines and things like that as well. All these things are things that are easily forgotten at an end of a tenancy. So if it's highlighted to the tenant prior to this, then it kind of preempts problems at the end. So yeah, definitely have conversations prior to the end of the tenancy and tenants moving out.
Now, you mentioned earlier that safe deposits is there to help, and I guess you're at the end of the phone if landlords or letting agents are struggling with this process. So if you're aware of a potential conflict that's going to arise with that tenant when you maybe do that visit prior to the end of the tenancy and think things are not going to go well here, I can see a problem arising. Could they be approaching safe deposits for help at that stage to say, listen, I just need a wee bit of guidance as to how to approach this situation with my tenant?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a self-resolution team in-house that helps navigate those problems. If landlords are foreseeing there's going to be a problem and maybe the relationship's broken down during the tenancy and the conversation isn't flowing as you would like to, we can intervene, help try and negotiate that issue before it gets to the dispute stage. So there's a service there to be used. There's a team there that can help. And if there's somebody there that needs a little help, then they feel free to get in touch with the team.
And how can landlords get in touch with you? How does it work?
So they can drop an email into the email address, info@Safe Deposit Scotland. There is an adjudication team that can help navigate that as well. And also, I don't think a lot of people realise that our office hours are open from 8 till 10, Monday to Friday. So those landlords who are doing their life admin in the evening, they've got the support there that somebody can give us a call and we can help them navigate or point them in the right direction or any guidance that they might need.
So it's always useful to know that even in the evenings, you can make that call to Safe Deposit Scotland and somebody will be able to help you at that time as well too. Obviously, you work very closely with SAL, the Scottish Association of Landlords, and we do regular online events for our members. And there's one coming up on the 19th of August, and you're leading us in that session, Carol. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're going to be talking to us about at that event on the 19th of August online?
Yes, absolutely. We have recently reduced the amount of time that you spent in the evidence gathering stage when submitting evidence prior to going into dispute. A couple of questions have been asked around that, and I think it would be a good opportunity to let you give a wee bit more definition and explanation about the reasons behind that as well. Also, we've had a couple of questions from agents regarding contractors' costs when submitting claims, so we're going to address that as well.
That sounds good. So it's an interesting event, I think, coming up, and that'll be on the 19th of August, and members of SAL can go online, scottishlandlords.com, look at the events section and book accordingly, and I look forward to speaking to you more about that then. With regards to perhaps finally some top tips for landlords and letting agents, Carol, if you want people who are listening to this today to take something away as a lesson, to think about, well, there's a point I'm going to pick up on that, what would be your top tips for those listening today?
I've probably touched on a couple of them there, but probably the first one I would say is having an inventory for your property for your tenant moving in. We found if things go to dispute and you don't have the evidence at the start of the tenancy to confirm the condition, it makes it really difficult for an adjudicator to make a decision based on the only evidence I've got at the end of the tenancy. So I think the big problem that landlords maybe fear is, where do we get this information from? Now, there are templates out there. John, I'm sure Laz has done some training sessions on inventories and things like that as well. There's a lot of guidance out there that can maybe help them sort of navigate way through a simple template that will support their claims if it goes to dispute. So I would definitely always recommend having an inventory. And once that template's been made, you can reuse it for your next tenancy. So the hard work's probably doing it initially, but once it's done, it's there. So it's a lot of support. It makes much sense that you've got some groundwork for where you want to proceed when it goes to a dispute. Secondly, is the communication. I can't emphasise enough. From experience, most disputes arise through the lack of communication between a landlord and tenant. So if you can keep the lines of communication open between yourself, it just means at the end of the tenancy, both parties can come to a mutual agreement, funds is returned sooner, and it's less admin for yourselves rather than have to go through a dispute at the end if you've resolved it before you even get to that stage. And the other thing I would say is probably use the resources that are out there. There is plenty of information out there. We understand that being a landlord's lonely, but there is people out there that's willing to help. There's guidance out there. You've got yourself, Sal, helping landlords at every opportunity, doing training courses, webinars. You've got other resources out there such as Home Energy Scotland. You've got Under One Roof. We've got the tenancy redress service in with safe deposits that helps landlords and tenants navigate through processes. There's just a wealth of information out there. Safe Deposits, a couple of years ago, gave some funding from the Charitable Trust to Deaf Scotland. And from that, they gave some funding to a scheme called Safe and Sound, which was an online service to help learning hearing difficulties with landlords and tenants to navigate their way through the PRS. So there is unusual information out there that might help landlords and tenants in the navigating their way through the process of being a landlord and releasing deposits and just the world of being a landlord. I think there's so much information out there, but that can be used to help make life a wee bit easier.
And of course, we as SAL have been doing these online sessions with Safe Deposit Scotland for some time now, and we now have ourselves built up a catalogue now of all the questions and answers that have ever been given on these online sessions, and they are collated in an online publication, and that's available as a resource as well too. So if you've got a question about how clean the property should be, how you assess that at the end of the tenancy, and the advice and support you give to tenants, that's all there within that document too. So hopefully that will be useful to members of SAL and is available there for members on request as well. Well, Carol, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. So I think there's a lot of really useful information you've shared, and hopefully we'll see you back on another podcast very soon. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, that was really interesting conversation. Thanks, John, and thanks again to Carol from Safe Deposit Scotland for that insightful and informative contribution to the podcast. Now, John, Parliament may be in recess, but landlords across Scotland are, of course, still at work, and SAL is continuing to support them. Can you give us an insight into what Sal has been up to on behalf of landlords in Scotland?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing our in-person meetings and going out there and meeting our letting agent members in the local communities, which has all been great. But the focus of our work has been on our annual conference. So it's our flagship conference, our award-winning conference for landlords and letting agents in Scotland. And this year that will be taking place in Edinburgh, and it's on the 21st of October, and that's again at Murrayfield Stadium. So we take over the whole stadium, and it's the largest gathering of landlords and letting agents and exhibition for landlords and letting agents too. So it's a conference and exhibition. We bring together many different trades and exhibitors who are willing, of course, to have a chat with delegates there in the day and tell them how they can help them support them in their lettings business, which is all great news. So that's been a big part of our work. I have to say, not just during the summer, but the whole year. Our events and conference team work very hard throughout the whole of the year to make sure that we can have the best conference that we possibly can.
And this isn't in the script, but last year was my first Scottish Letting Day as a communications provider for Sal, and I was very impressed with it. It was an excellent day. The whole thing ran very smoothly, and it's well worth coming along to if you're in the industry. Absolutely.
And the credit's all down to our events team, who do a fantastic job there. So we've been working on that, and indeed, if people want to go and find out more about that, they can certainly go online to scottishlandlords.com and find out how to book their place. And also we brought out the new edition of Landlord Focus, our Landlord Focus magazine for members as well too. And that's, again, another excellent resource and publication there, available online and in hard copy for members. So certainly any feedback on that is very welcome as well too.
John, I think that's great. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about what services are available, and perhaps how, if landlords who might be listening to the podcast or watching the recording might want to get involved and join SAL, how would they go about doing that?
Well, I think we always say SAL is there as a group to offer support to landlords and letting agents in Scotland, and we're the only dedicated organisation doing that just for landlords and letting agents in Scotland. So we want to be the voice of the private rented sector. That's what we aim to do. And of course, we talk a lot about our lobbying and campaigning work and the relationships we develop with politicians and those in power to make sure that our voice is heard. But of course, the number one support that our members benefit from is our free helpline. So we offer a helpline that's available 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and we have a team of people there who are there literally to take calls from our members. Of course, you have to be a member of SAL. It's, as I say, the main benefit of membership, but anything to do with the private rented sector, your landlord-tenant relationship, we can help you with. And even in our visits to our letting agent members, some of them use the service quite a lot, and they say, sometimes we know the answer, but we just need reassurance there that we're on the right track or we're dealing with this in the right way. So I think that's a really beneficial service that we offer, and we've got an excellent team there supporting that helpline. In addition to that, of course, we've got a range of online resources as well too. So documents like what I was talking about there with Carol, to do with tenancy deposits and a whole range of other subjects. So again, they can go to our resource area of our website and download at your leisure whatever you want to help you in your lettings business. We also have a range of online videos as well, some of which are training sessions or recordings of online events we've done with members. So there's quite a lot there, both online at the end of a telephone, that you can read and catch up on in your own time. So we're there to be that support. And for many people, they say, especially if they're employers, they think SAL is a bit like having another employee. It's another person to speak to go to for that all-important support and help.
Well, that's brilliant. And John, well, with that, another episode of Landlord Voice comes to an end. Thank you for watching or for listening. And please, again, do think about liking, sharing, or subscribing to Landlord Voice to help us reach more people. So for me, Alan Grant, and for John Blackwood, we will see you next time. Landlord Voice is a podcast by the Scottish Association of Landlords, produced in partnership with Alan Grant Communications and Mallard Productions. All footage and music was used with permission. Questions, comments, suggestions, or other feedback should be sent to alan@alangrantcommunications.com.